introduce you to the most important person in our lives right now. Not you. I meant our boat operator. That is Joe here. This is our boat operator. He's going to take us safely across the lake. Now, before we get underway, I do have an important safety announcement to make. If we were to have an emergency on the vessel, we do have controllable flotation devices on either side of the helm. We have two bars on either side of the helm, and then we have two personal flotation devices. They're in those bins attached.
This is the only cave accessed by the boat. So in Shasta Lake City in California, USA, it's accessed by boat. Only cave in US accessed by the boat, so we had to go across the Shasta Lake to go to the cave.
Down and pick up the other half. Does that sound good? Okay, cool.
Ba chụp quay ngược lại chụp nè,
Chụp gì?
chụp cái kiểu nó sắp ra cao.
Okay. Đi đằng. We get the bus go to the cave. Đưa bạn đi mưa vậy.
So the road up to the cave is paved, but the pavement can't come down into the lake. So the blacktop starts at the tree line. So this is going to be the off-road portion of our journey today. So it is quite normal for Shasta Lake to rise and fall, not just throughout the course of 1 year, but from 1 year to the next. So you can kind of see last year's high water mark is almost fine. The lake and the dam are designed to catch 1 good year of rain and dole it out over 4 to 5 years of drought.
Because I can be at 11 o'clock.
The wheel in front of the cave. Shasta cave.
Waiting on one more. On the lake are this red, orange color, that's shale. But if you look at the mountain that we're about to take a tour through, it's battleship gray. This is a completely different type of rock. This is limestone. Limestone is a sedimentary rock. According to science, it formed 206. The chemical reaction comes from the snap of the breaking of surface tension in the water. But eventually, these will get plugged up. The crystal will, it grows as a tube for a while, but eventually the end becomes plugged up and it gets kind of a knob or nodule, kind of looks like an arrowhead on the end there. Now the water won't be able to flow through the tubes anymore because they're closed off, but it'll flow down the outside, and that little pointy arrowhead formation will continue to grow at a rate of about 1 cubic inch per century. So this one here looks like a chili pepper on a stick. It's probably about 150, maybe 200 years worth of growth. Now I'm just estimating that that's about 1.5 to 2 cubic inches. It may be bigger than that actually. I don't dare go over there to measure it because they're a bit delicate. So as that knob on the end continues to grow, it'll climb up that stick and create a more familiar shape. This is a stalactite. This is the most well-known of cavern formations. It's probably exactly what you expected to see in here today. Each of these began as a hollow tube that got plugged up and continued to expand. In this case, we think for something like 10 to 12,000 years, which is very impressive.
They are solid, right?
They are solid, yes. Yes, well, sometimes they'll have the remains of this hollow tube down the center. So there are a couple of broken ones I'll be able to show you on the tour, where you can see the original soda straw at the center of the stalactite formation. The other formation, the other main difference is that the stalagmites did not begin as a hollow tube. They're just a spot where the drops have been hitting and you start to get a mound of calcite growing upwards. So they're also kind of squat, you see, compared to the stalactites, which are quite... In fact, yes, sir.
Yeah, that's near Shasta volcano. The ever lava go through this tube? Lava?
So this is not a lava tube exactly. It's a limestone solutional cavern.
Okay.
But because we have volcanoes nearby, there is some volcanic rock in this cave. And,
Okay.
I'll try and point some of it out to you in the places where I kind of know where it is, but it's similar to the limestone, but in a couple places where you see crevices, all sides making stalactites and stalactites. Actually, here comes the other tour. We're gonna head on by. As you can see, it kind of looks like the surface of a frozen puddle, and when the water drained away, it fractured because it can't support its own weight. We're gonna see a much more dramatic example of that in the next room. Right this way.
Hey, hey.
Hey, there's anything new here?
I know, in a cave. I got rid of all the cave monsters, so it's all clear.
Okay, we're all clear. Careful what you wish for.
There are.
Are old enough to have experienced more than one ice age. So things as big as that, if they've truly been growing at a rate of 1 cubic inch per century, this one here, we estimate is 5,000 to 7,000 years old, which means all of this fell earlier than that. This was a calcite raft, just like what we were looking at as we left the other room, that little mud puddle where the crystal formed over the surface and then cracked and fell. We think the same thing happened here on a much grander scale, that the water in the dome was all the way to this level, and that a very thick calcite raft formed over the entire surface. And this is the remains of it here. This tunnel, now this actually also relates to water flow, because this was going to be a part of the tour path. We were supposed to go up this tunnel to the basement room, but when they got just a little bit around where you can see there, I've been back in this tunnel, it only goes a few feet to the right when you get around the corner there, because they stopped drilling when they found they could hear the sound of flowing water on the other side of the rock, because they thought it might be too dangerous. But because there is no stream flowing in from above, that can't really be a constant source of water. What we now believe is back there is a chamber that fills with water after it rains, and it takes about a week for the water to drain out. And that's probably what they were hearing. So it would have been as dangerous as they believed, but possibly messy after it rained. But nevertheless, they abandoned this tunnel and they did not complete it. But they broke all of this, thinking people would be walking under it. But there's about a ½ an inch of growth, other than which direction it's pointing. In fact, this one started off as a helictite and changed its mind and became a helicmite. Who am I to judge? So I think we understand that gravity makes the water come down, and that creates these structures. And here, even with the corallite, you can sort of get, okay, well, that's surface tension being stronger than gravity, so the water sticks to the wall. But what's going on here? Okay, it does actually have something to do with surface tension. We think that there is a tube down the center of the helictites about the width of a human hair. So instead of gravity being the primary mover of water, it's pressure and surface tension that make the water beat up this way or that, and therefore the crystal grow this way or that. That is one possible explanation, and that's the one that's in my script, but I'm not going to swear to you that that's true. Within the last 5 years, another scientific study has been published suggesting that possibly the helictites are the result of some kind of interaction with bacteria, and that's why they grow in a more chaotic and random way. But that's the reason that we still have scientists study this cave and other caves, because we don't have all of the answers yet. And the helictites are still one of the least understood of the crystal formation. When I came on this tour with my school group in elementary school, they didn't have an explanation for the helictites and the helicmites. So science marches on.
When did they discover this cave?
What's that?
When did they discover this cave? When?
This cave? So the earliest known exploration of this cave was in 1874.
Oh,
and it was conducted by James Richardson, who was one of the managers of the fish hatchery in Baird, and two other men, and I don't remember the names of the other men, I apologize, but I believe they were surveyors for the government. So that was why they were interested in things like caves and the shape of the land up here. And like I said, the fish hatchery, one of the things they were doing at the fish hatchery was trying to get an idea of how building large dams on these rivers would affect the fish population. So they were also, because of the dam and the potential lake, they were also interested in the shape of the countryside. And I think everyone's interested in caves because they're fascinating.
Yeah, I do.
But then 3 years later, the young man who was the hunter from the fish hatchery, now some of this is anecdotal, but supposedly he was tracking a bobcat or maybe some other type of animal, looking for an animal's den. And that's when he discovered that the one thing that looked like a good place for an animal to go into just kept going. And it got so far to where you couldn't, without equipment, go any further. And he came back with Richardson on the 3rd of November, 1878, they came into the cave. And on the 11th of November, they got into this room right here, which is where we're going next. So interestingly enough, this is the last part of the cave that was that's on the tour that was discovered. So this room was discovered approximately 1978. The room we're about to walk into was first explored at least as early as 1878.
This one not on top of the one on the bottom, huh? No? Not on top?
Kind of.
Kind on top?
Kind of on top of, yeah.
Oh.
If it's not exactly above the other room, it's close. It's close.
Yeah.
It's difficult to say. It's really easy to get turned around in here. Well, another one of the things that the science team is doing, they're using LiDAR to make a detailed model of the interior of the cave. So they'll make a computer graphics model of the inside of the cave. They use something that looks like a laser disco ball that bounces lasers off the room. And so in another decade or so, we'll be able to take a second reading and compare the two. And we'll even be able to say if the crystals are growing faster on one side of the room than the other, so that's very exciting. So for 50 years, we've been telling people that crystals grow at a rate of 1 cubic inch per century, but as we get better technology and we can make better readings, we're going to be able to check those figures and possibly, get even more accurate figures.
Right.
Or find out they were never accurate to begin with,
Okay.
We're going to go through the basement room here. There's not a lot to see in the basement room. Well, there's a couple things. You can see the inside of flowstone when it's broken open. So all of this plain flowstone looks like this on the inside. That's pretty interesting. This crystal is a part of that flowstone. But there's not a lot happening in this room because we think there's a layer of denser material above the room.
We didn't hear about that. What was that?
Oh, that's the same steps we were coming up.
Oh, okay.
So at the top of these stairs, they broke through a piece of flowstone. So here's the same flowstone we've been looking at in all these rooms, but this is what it looks like on the inside.
Wow.
And all of the flowstone that looks like this would look like this if we broke it open. No, we're not going to break any more open today. But at the end of this tunnel, they definitely broke through it. But the only really interesting thing in this room, other than the fact that you can see what the entire cave looked like before it got filled in, there's a little bit of crystal growing on this side of the room. But these kind of Swiss cheese-like holes are left over from the hollowing out. And they're in the other rooms too, but when the crystals grow through them, they disguise them a bit. This is the way to the champagne room. So when I said the Heather of the science team rappelled down, they went down there. Morton and Richardson were right here on November 11, 1878, because they left us a note. Morton, we believe, was the young man who was a hunter, and Richardson was one of the managers. November 11 was their second trip into the cave. We think on the 3rd, they only saw the very first room, which would be the last room for us, because we're going in the other direction. Here they are again. This is the popcorn room. Somewhere. All this coral inclined breeze. And actually, you can probably feel it right about here. As we get closer to the natural, you can start to feel the airflow. Now, if you'd like, you can peek in there and look up, you might see something.
Hay quá, được.
But I don't think we're going to go that way. I think we
Okay,
should go
that's it.
upstairs.
Rất là lạ. Miss này uống lắm á.
It's worth noting that Morton and Richardson didn't even have that. They came down on ropes. In fact, we think people came and went for 70 years before that piece of
Vô game có cái gì
equipment was
thì
installed.
Con thôi.
And it was only in use for about 20 years before the first tour.
Còn mấy trên nó giống như là đi công tác thôi.
Là quá, hay quá.
So this will be the last room on our tour, but for most of the history of the cave, this was the first room, because until 1959, this was the only way in or out of the cave.
Hay quá.
So Morton and Richardson would have had to come in here as well as anyone else who came in prior to 1959. So I can make a couple of suppositions about Morton and Richardson. I suppose neither one of them suffered from obesity or cowardice. And folks were pretty tough in the 1870s.
Nice.
Now they each had a metal helmet, and mounted on their helmet was a lantern, a carbide lantern. Now, this is a 720 lumen flashlight. A carbide lantern gives off 1 lumen, maybe 2 if you've got a good one. So they wouldn't have been able to see this room anywhere nearly as well as we're seeing it now. Can you get a good photograph in this light?
Yeah. Right.
Welcome to the cathedral room. Church is now in session.
We can make the wedding in here.
There
Wedding
have been weddings in this room. I don't know if they do it anymore. But we have had weddings in this room, and you can rent the boat for weddings.
Yeah.
So,
What stopped them what stopped them not doing the wedding room?
I think because it's difficult for older folks to get up here, like mom and grandma and things like that. It's very difficult for some people to climb into this room. But I don't know, if you're interested in booking the room for a wedding, you can ask. I'm not sure if they would do it. I know they would love to book the boat for a wedding.
Yeah, all right.
Those last years.
Yeah. I booked for my anniversary.
So we have about a 50-50 chance of seeing bats in this room.
Oh.
And there were some over here yesterday. There's one. Oh, there's several of them.
Where is he?
Here, hanging from those stalactites.
Small one?
Yeah, see the dark things on the end of the stalactites. They're not large bats. They're not like the kind they have in Australia, the flying foxes. So they're about so big with their wings all spread out.
So if they are bad here, how can they escape? Get out?
They go through the natural entrance.
Right here?
So there is a.
Go out
there's
there.
an iron gate up there
Oh.
that keeps bears and mountain lions and humans from coming in. But the bats can fly right through it. In fact, it looks like it's an old jailhouse door from the Old West, and it probably is. It was probably some old thing they had lying around in 1959. And it's got like a slot where you can take food to the prisoner, and the bats can just come and go through there.
Yeah.
They don't need caves to live. They can live just about any place where they can hang upside down for the night. But they use the cave as a safe place to raise their young. So each mother bat will have one pup. The baby bat stick to the wall upside down for the first 5 weeks of their life. The mother bats go out at night and feed on mosquitoes, but one or two of the females will stay behind with the pups. When the mother bats return from feeding, each mother bat will find and nurse only her own pup. But they will take turns staying behind with the young when the others go out to feed.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting.
And then at 5 weeks of age, the little bats learn how to fly just like little birds, in 1 second or not at all.
You know, in few years past, we went to one of the caves in Indonesia called Mulu Cave.
Million
When the
pounds.
sun is set, about to set, there is millions.
And they come out all at once.
Yeah.
All at once. It's just magnificent.
To hunt. To
I
hunt.
would love to see that here. We don't have that many bats. We think that our bat colony tops out at about 300 bats in the summertime.
The caves.
And in the winter, it may drop to as little as 100 bats or fewer.
It's the same weather or in winter or summer.
It's, well, we have very mild winters. But it's definitely different weather because in the summertime, it gets to be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit here.
But still,
quite often.
Still you have visitors.
But in the cave, yes, oh yes, all year long, yes, we do have visitors. We do have to be very careful about people getting heat exhausted coming down the steps. That's actually we have more trouble with that than with
So the humidity is more during the summertime.